Amazing moment, billionaire's son makes an incredible choice to help a struggling mom and baby. Ethan had it all: a coveted internship at one of the most prestigious consulting firms, an Ivy League education, and a father who was a self-made billionaire. Yet, as he watched a single drop of rain race down his library window, he felt anything but successful. The weight of his father's expectations suffocated him, a heavy cloak woven with the threads of legacy and brilliance. How could he ever measure up? Was this all that life had to offer? As he sat in the cafe, debating whether to jump into a conversation with his ambitious peers, he caught himself trembling. Despite occasional accomplishments, he felt adrift. The path paved for him was gilded, but it didn't shine the way he suspected it should. Today, amidst towering walls of corporate ambition, he would choose to spend his afternoon volunteering. A thought flickered that he was lending his privilege to others less fortunate, but even such altruism felt empty against the backdrop of his arranged future. In the bustling warmth of the community outreach program, Ethan met Sarah. A scrappy, fierce woman with tired eyes, she juggled her sick newborn and debt like marbles on a tightrope. Her resolve struck him more than any boardroom meeting ever could. Her laughter, even in desperation, echoed in his bones, contrasting sharply against his own polished, emotionless world. Is there more to life than this? He wondered as he pored over her situation. Night after night, her struggle surfaced in troubled thoughts. Torn between pride and compassion, Ethan hesitated. Helping Sarah, a stranger burdened with so much more than he perceived, would mean diving deeply into a reality he had been sheltered from. Could he reconcile his privilege with her pain? As the days passed, her chronic struggle weighed in on his conscience. He had everything he ever wanted, yet the sensation of emptiness grew heavier. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Pressure mounted inside him like an earthquake waiting to erupt. Each week, Sarah's deadline loomed closer, an eviction notice threatening to strip away her last foothold of stability. The churning dilemma coiled tighter around him. Should he act? He envisioned slipping her money anonymously, an act of kindness cloaked in an opulent shadow, allowing him to save face while indulging in altruism. But then the questions gnawed at him like a starving dog. Would this tip the scale of his family's reputation? Could he pull the trigger without exposing his motives? As Sarah's plights intertwined more intimately with his own mindset, slowly, his pretentious crown began to feel like shackles. A shocking revelation regarding hidden dealings within his father's empire started trickling into the news cycle, igniting a storm of uncertainty. Ethan's long-concealed fears thundered inside him as he realized he might have the power to change a life. But if he faltered, would he shatter his own? Or worse, would he somehow land himself embroiled in a scandal of familial disgrace? Anxiety clawed at him relentlessly as he stood at the edge of decision. He was teetering at a precipice. How far would he go for someone he barely knew but had come to admire so deeply? Each day felt heavier, the weight of critical decisions pressing down on him with the force of an undeniable tide. Ethan trudged through his internship routine, but productivity eluded him as thoughts of Sarah and her looming crisis consumed his mind. The latest headlines about his father's questionable business practices crackled through the air like a static-filled radio, elevating his anxiety about the family's reputation. Would his act of generosity towards Sarah be seen as a noble gesture or a desperate attempt to escape his impending reality? During a lunch break, Ethan drowned out the chatter of colleagues discussing performance metrics and revenue forecasts. Instead, he stared at the cluttered table, poring over a makeshift plan. Could he discreetly lend Sarah the assistance she needed without involving his father? The idea excited him, yet, simultaneously sparked a cascade of fears. Dare he engage directly in matters beyond his father's control? That question hovered, urging him to consider the possibility of taking tangible, adult responsibility. Throughout the week, he formulated a strategy. Ethan began collecting small sums from his own allowance, convinced that some might be enough to make a difference. But yet another dilemma emerged who would help him determine the exact amount needed. Up until this point in his life, all decisions were framed by others, leading predictable paths that avoided real-life consequences. The urgency to act propelled him into unfamiliar territory. Could he be the one to drive change for someone else, without clinging to the comforts of his privileged surroundings? A sense of defiance brewed within him as he prepared to meet Sarah again. Rather than slipping cash under her door anonymously, an idea took root. He would confront his fears and offer direct support. There was strength in visibility and honesty. Ethan practiced what he would say, fighting against the waves of embarrassment that rose within him. When they met at the outreach program that Saturday, Sarah looked worn but determined. The sight of her reminded Ethan of the late nights she'd endured, tangled in worry over impending bills while caring for her sick child. He couldn't suppress the empathy that welled up in his chest. In that moment, Ethan felt like he was staring into a mirror. Her struggles reflected the conflicts that raged within his own life. "You know, your situation really got me thinking," he began, feeling unsteady. "I want to help. But I don't want to just throw money at it. Is there a way we can work together to get you through this?" Her glance flickered with surprise before morphing into something deeper, curiosity mixed with caution. "What do you mean by work together?" Ethan breathed in the moment, the pulse of something shifting between them. "I can help you with a plan, maybe find additional resources, work out a budget. I just don't want to be someone who throws money without understanding the real problem." Surprisingly, a spark of hope ignited in Sarah's tired eyes. It was as if she saw someone willing to step into her life, someone not driven solely by guilt or obligation. "Are you sure? I mean, this isn't a charity. You could get in trouble for involving yourself like this." "That's the point," he asserted, meeting her gaze. In that vulnerability, something profound awoke in him. He wasn't just rich, he was capable. As they worked together to sketch out a plan, the storm inside Ethan began to calm. For the first time in ages, he felt purposeful, his heart racing not from fear but from the connection growing between them. The act wasn't just about saving Sarah, it was about liberating himself from the shadows of expectation. Ethan grabbed his phone to check the time. He'd been so engrossed in their conversation that he lost track of his responsibilities, both at the internship and home. Yet now, the thought of returning to a world of cold corporate ambition felt suffocating. A sharp ping from his phone shattered his focus, revealing a notification, a news article about a fresh scandal concerning his father's business. Drained by the potential fallout, Ethan's stomach twisted. Would this week's tensions finally boil over? The moment of truth approached, and he knew this wasn't just a simple dilemma anymore. Everything began in that cafe, and now he stood at the crossroads of his own identity. Would he choose the path he was heavily pressured to follow, or will he step off the gilded track to carve his own way forward? For now, he couldn't look back. The time had come to face his reality and all its uncertainties, but how far would he have to go to make a change? Ethan's feet felt heavy as he navigated the corridors of his internship the following Monday. His mind was still tangled in the events from the weekend. The conversation with Sarah felt reborn inside him, echoing with a sense of purpose he had never known. Yet, lurking beneath that excitement was a profound anxiety, sharpened by the fresh news of his father's scandal. Briefing lists and endless performance forecasts danced in front of him, but they seemed irrelevant, mere shadows compared to the vivid reality of Sarah's struggles. He was slipping through the cracks, conscious that he was meant to be both a dutiful intern and a supportive ally. Was it possible to juggle these two parts of his life without completely falling apart? In the dim light of his cubicle, Ethan scrolled through news articles about his father's company's transgressions. Each click further tightened the anxiety in his chest, every headline suggesting a world spiraling into chaos. He couldn't help wondering what his father's downfall meant for him. Would it brand him as a failure too? This uncertainty roped him deeper into deliberation. Would he continue down a path dictated by family expectations or take a forgotten road leading to something uniquely his own? The tension coiled tighter at lunch, where laughter erupted around him. Ethan poked at his meal, a familiar weight pressing on his chest. He glanced up to see coworkers animatedly discussing their weekend plans, completely oblivious to the turmoil he was grappling with. Among this cheerful chatter, amid the sea of privilege, he felt like an imposter. Time ticked on, and Ethan resolved to change the narrative. He pulled out his phone and texted Sarah, asking if they could meet again. A few minutes later, her response pinged back, punctuated with a hint of caution but also a glimmer of hope. "Sure, I'd like that." "When?" Determined, he suggested they meet at a nearby cafe, a place far removed from the shadows of expectations anchored in his life. As he headed over, he recalled their last meeting, the palpable shift when they dared to confront vulnerability together. He needed to express more than just a desire to help. He needed to show that he believed in a future where they could overcome their circumstances collectively. But what if she didn't want his charity? What if she saw him as just another wealthy kid playing at solving problems? That would crush him. Arriving at the cafe, Ethan scanned for her familiar figure. His heart raced when he spotted her seated at a corner table, looking as if she had been lost in thought. Her eyes, which had once seemed so burdened, now gleamed with a silent resilience. A wave of inspiration surged through him just seeing her. "Hey," he greeted, his voice steadier than he felt. "Hi," she replied, a warm flicker igniting in her expression. Ethan slid into the chair across from her, gathering his thoughts. "I really think we can tackle this together. I've been brainstorming some options." "Options?" Sarah's brow lifted, her eyes wary yet intrigued. "Yeah, I've looked into community resources for families going through similar difficulties. There might be help with utilities, food programs, things that can ease your burden and set a clearer path forward." Her expression softened, perhaps recognizing the weight of his endeavor. "You're not just, throwing money at it?" "Not at all," he asserted, feeling the sincerity of his own words. "I want to actually understand what you need, what you're facing. Let us build something together." As they began exchanging ideas, real concrete steps towards tackling her financial crisis, Ethan sensed the weight of his responsibilities shifting. The more they planned, the clearer it became. Facing problems directly, instead of skirting around them, was where real change happened. It built resilience, not just for Sarah, but also deep within himself. But every plan has its own trials, and as they dove into logistics, the truth of his family's situation lingered in the background. Ethan knew that he might need to confront his father soon, challenge expectations, and fend for his own identity. It was daunting. Just then, Sarah looked at him, her expression shifting to one of earnestness. "You really don't have to do this. You could go back to your life, this privilege you have. Why are you willing to step into my chaos?" Ethan paused, grappling with her question. His response held a heaviness of its own. "Maybe I'm finally ready to find my own path, away from all this." Before he could finish, his phone buzzed again, interrupting the moment. A new notification caught his eye. It was another article, breaking news about his father, the title declaring the potential collapse of his company. With a racing heart, Ethan realized that his commitment to help Sarah was now entwined with a reckoning he could no longer avoid. He would have to confront the demons of his upbringing in tandem with the fresh opportunities blossoming in front of him. How much would he be able to bring himself to sacrifice, and what price would he ultimately pay in trying to forge a new identity? The stakes were higher than ever as he prepared to consider where loyalty lay. As he locked eyes with Sarah again, new weights pressed on him, personal stakes woven into the fabric of ethical responsibility. The choices before him felt both thrilling and terrifying. Would he have the courage to stand up against his father's legacy, or would he remain shackled to it? Ethan's heart thudded in his chest as the cafe buzz faded into the background. Sarah's question hung between them, charged with emotion, and the enormity of what he was attempting registered deeply within him. This wasn't just about helping her, a struggling single mother. This was about redefining his own identity in the process. "Look, Sarah," he said, shaking off the weight of the article still flashing in his mind, "I need to figure out what I truly stand for. This is part of it." A moment of silence stretched, and Ethan could see the gears turning in Sarah's mind. Her wariness transformed into curiosity, and slowly her perspective shifted from skepticism to cautious hope. "Okay," she said at last, "let us dive into this a little deeper. Where do we start? With a sense of clarity, Ethan began outlining a plan. They brainstormed pragmatic steps to access community resources while Ethan chipped in his own ideas, offering to craft an engagement strategy that might appeal to local businesses for support. Each suggestion felt like an act of rebellion against the suffocating expectations of his family, a way to inject meaning back into his life. As they spoke, Ethan discovered a confidence blooming within him. He relished the way their dialogue shifted from hesitance to energetic collaboration. The discomfort he felt before began dissolving, replaced by a growing certainty that his life could soar beyond the confines of privilege. However, amidst the excitement, the gravity of his father's company loomed overhead like storm clouds ready to burst. What would his father think of Ethan spending his time this way? Would he dismiss these efforts as foolish idealism? The thought gnawed at him, an inescapable shadow that threatened to taint the momentum he was feeling with Sarah. Ethan? Her voice broke through his reverie. Are you okay? The concern in her tone made him realize he had drifted into uncertainty. Yeah, sorry. Just thinking about other things. She studied him closely. It's all connected, isn't it? Your world and mine. But you can still choose which path you take. Her words resonated, invoking the age-old struggle of choosing between duty and desire. Ethan felt threads of hesitation tighten around his heart. If confronting his father meant dismantling his family's legacy, would he be prepared for the fallout? How could he justify pursuing a relationship with Sarah while striving to carve out his own identity from the shallows of his father's shadow? They wrapped up their session with a solid foundation in mind, but Ethan couldn't shake the looming uncertainty. I should really go home and run this by some people who might help solidify our plan, he said at last, though the inner fight left him feeling slightly defeated. Just know you have the ability to change the narrative. You've taken one big step, and it sounds like you want to keep moving forward, Sarah reminded him, echoing the resolve he so desperately aimed to cultivate. As they finished their coffee, her presence flooded him with motivation, prompting him to reach deeper into the truth of himself. He wanted to become someone who wasn't just defined by his last name, but someone who could instigate real change. Later that evening, as he walked home in the twilight, Ethan began crafting a message for his father. The words turned over in his mind like poetry begging to be written, a confrontation that could shatter hushed expectations but potentially pave a new way for himself, free from shackles. He paused outside his front door, uncertainty saturating his resolve. Would saying no to his father mean losing the only identity he had ever known? Or would it signify embracing the conviction that had begun to take root in his heart, spurred on by an unlikely friendship? As he stepped inside, he hesitated, fingers hovering above his phone. The stakes loomed larger than life, and he was left to consider the gravitational pull of his familial legacy against the urgent whisper of a life untouched by expectation. In that moment of stillness, trapped between duty and self-discovery, Ethan had to decide if the choice to advocate for his own beliefs, even at the sacrifice of his father's approval, was worth the risk. He could feel the weighty tides of destiny shifting, and he knew then that the time had come to face his father, not just as his son, but as an individual ready to challenge the world. Would he finally make the call, or retreat to the comfort of silence? The next morning brought a restless energy that crackled in the air, urging Ethan to face the decisions swirling in his mind. Instead of reaching for his phone and drafting a message that could irrevocably alter their relationship, he decided to step away from the storm of conflict plaguing him. He could sense the growing tension between his emerging identity and the suffocating expectations of his father. He switched into work mode, starting the day with a routine that felt both familiar and foreign. But instead of pouring himself into the responsibilities tied to his father's company, he diverted his energy toward the burgeoning plans with Sarah. Concerned yet exhilarated, he sat down at his desk, pulling out a notepad. He sketched out their ideas while layering them with strategies to directly approach local businesses. Each bullet point felt like an invitation to forge a new path, one that intertwined purpose with action. As he crafted this outline, a spark of realization ignited within him. He was capable of creating real impact. His instincts had always told him he could do more than simply exist within the gilded cage his father's name provided. With every word he wrote, he unraveled new threads of his identity, one that fused personal ambition with a sense of responsibility to advocate for those who felt unheard. However, the thoughts of retreating to his father's world loomed like a specter. What if his efforts were perceived as childish? What if his father's disappointment echoed overwhelmingly in his life? Perhaps he would crumble under the weight of that judgment. The rush of anxiety tightened his chest, threatening to derail his newfound fervor. But amid the uncertainty, he recognized a fundamental truth: it was time to claim his narrative, to redefine success on his own terms, rather than merely inheriting the golden expectations laid before him. That renewed sense of determination led him to instinctively pick up his phone. He hesitated for a brief moment, feeling the familiar pull of doubt, but he was set on reshaping his destiny. He tapped out a message to Sarah instead, suggesting they meet later in the afternoon to discuss their plans. "I have some ideas," he wrote, heart racing with anticipation. Her quick reply ignited a wave of excitement within him. "I can't wait." As Ethan immersed himself in the details of their plans, flashes of the conversation he and Sarah had shared buzzed in his mind, intertwining with visceral memories of what it felt like to engage meaningfully with someone else's struggles. That afternoon, as they met, Sarah's enthusiasm fueled Ethan's confidence. They brainstormed ways to present their ideas persuasively to local businesses, possibilities blossoming like wildflowers in a clearing. Each suggestion they exchanged tightened the bonds of collaboration and trust between them. With every note taken, Ethan felt the tension stemming from his father's looming presence begin to dissolve. For the first time in forever, his laughter mingled effortlessly with Sarah's, underscoring the realization that he didn't need to carry his father's legacy in the usual form. There were alternatives, and they could build them together. Yet, amidst the bursts of creativity, an unshakable seed of dread nestled within him. Again, the looming confrontation with his father rested like a stone in his throat. The thought of discussing his newfound goals felt like standing at the edge of a precipice, with nothing but endless dark below. As thoughts flickered back to his father's stern gaze, a nagging fear resurfaced. What if he saw Ethan's ambitions as nothing more than rebellion? But alongside the fear flickered a freedom he hadn't tasted before. He reminded himself that a life lived cloaked in someone else's expectations was no life at all. And as they wrapped up their meeting, ideas in hand, Ethan stood fortified with purpose. He resolved to confront his truth despite the shadows cast by his father's legacy. With a sense of finality, he knew the time had come to make that call. It wouldn't just be a message. It would be a declaration of independence. He could feel the tides of his fate shifting as he balanced precariously over the divide, ready to leap, or potentially to fall. The moment to decide was rapidly approaching, and Ethan could almost hear the whispers of his father's voice echoing in defiance. Would he assert himself, or would fear chain him to a life unchosen? The answer lingered just out of reach, and in the fragile silence of his resolve, change was imminent. Ethan felt the pulse of urgency thrumming in his veins, propelling him to act. His mind raced as he navigated the labyrinth of thoughts, each twist pulling him closer to that pivotal conversation. He stepped out of the office, deciding to take the stairs to clear his head. Each ascent felt like a challenge, a symbol of the climb he was making toward his own life. On the way down, he recalled the faces of those he encountered in the community. He thought of the mother he had met just days ago at Sarah's outreach event, whose worn hands told a story of struggle. She balanced 2 jobs while raising a newborn, her daily battle with exhaustion evident. That confrontation with reality jolted him out of his sheltered existence. His heart pounded harder as the elevator doors buzzed open. Was he merely going to inherit profit margins, or could he become an architect of change? He stopped abruptly at the lobby, pondering the question that lingered: what kind of legacy did he truly want to create? Determined, he pulled out his phone and dialed Sarah's number. Her voice came through, warm and filled with possibility. "Hey, Ethan. What's up? Can we meet again?" "There's something important I need to discuss," he replied, masking his rising anxiety with a facade of calm. "Sure. How about tomorrow?" "I have a feeling this is going to be big," she exclaimed, the enthusiasm in her voice igniting a flicker of hope within him. As he ended the call, Ethan's determination solidified. He had to align this vision they shared with his own aspirations, but first, he needed to gain clarity on his personal mission. The fear of disappointing his father paled in comparison to the burden of inauthenticity. With a newfound purpose, he returned home, determined to pen down his thoughts. Sitting at his desk, he examined the foundation of his intent. What did he want to achieve? Why did it matter? He began writing, letting his thoughts flow unfiltered. What if I could create a program that connects struggling families with resources? What if our venture didn't just drive profits but also help lives? Each word transformed from mere ideas to a solid manifesto of his desires, a way to reclaim his narrative while contributing something meaningful to the world. Hours slipped by as he meticulously crafted proposals, objectives, and outreach strategies. He envisioned collaboration with local businesses that could sponsor the initiative, giving families the support they lacked. The prospect became a brilliant spark, illuminating the dark spaces of his uncertainty. But as the adrenaline subsided, he was hit by another wave of apprehension. How would he present this to his father? Would his father scoff at what he might label as idealistic? The stakes felt monumental, the distance between his father's expectations and his vision yawning wider than ever. Just then, he felt a ping from his laptop. It was an email notification from one of the community organizations they had aimed to partner with. They expressed interest in setting up a meeting to discuss his proposed project. Ethan couldn't shake the chills that swept over him, a mixture of thrill and fear. This could be it, the juncture that defined his career. As he stared blankly at the screen, the weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders. Could he pull this off? Ethically intertwining his family's legacy with something real felt like a gamble at best, a potential betrayal at worst. Yet, the thought of remaining stagnant beneath the shadow of expectation was unbearable. He couldn't remain stagnant, hovering beneath the weight of legacy, while the world outside waited for his step forward. He was prepared for the conversations to come. In them, he would declare not just his enterprise but his existence. Tomorrow he would share these thoughts with Sarah, and soon after, he would stand poised to confront his father. As he marked down the next steps, a new wave washed over him. He was more than just the billionaire's son. He was a catalyst for change, an advocate for those whose voices might remain silenced without intervention. The unwavering thought lingered: how would his father respond? This meeting amounted to more than just a conversation. It was the beginning of Ethan's transformation. Before sleep could claim him, a resolute thought emerged with clarity. Tomorrow, he would make his move. Little did he know, it was merely the first stride in a confrontation that would test the very foundation of their relationship. The moment would arrive when he would truly face his father. Ethan woke up with a sense of both excitement and dread. Dawn light crept through his window, a vivid reminder that today he would take a massive step towards something new. The weight of his aspirations collided with the enormity of his obligations. He stretched as if trying to physically shake off the fears binding him to complacency. Breakfast felt like a formality, each bite a distraction from the deeper current of thoughts swirling in his mind. He found himself absently distracted by his father's morning routine, an intricate ballet of structure and purpose. The television blared with headlines outlining the day's market forecasts, but Ethan was lost in a different kind of forecast, his future. With a determined exhale, he grabbed his notes, the manifesto he had poured his hopes into the night before. He crafted it into something tangible, filled with clarity and passion. A glimmer of idea formation grew within him, a vision for the resource connection program that could change lives, starting with that struggle he saw in the mother's eyes. Driving to Sarah's office mirrored his swirling emotions. Each red light seemed endless, a pause prolonging the inevitable. Self-doubt crept in. What if this ambition wasn't enough? What if his vision didn't align with the reality of his privileged upbringing? Those thoughts festered, but he swallowed them. He had come too far to turn back now. Arriving at the sleek, glass-fronted building where Sarah worked, he sat for a moment in the car, taking a deep breath. Gathering himself, he stepped into the building, feeling the cool air in contrast to the knot of adrenaline inside. He sought clarity, a moment where he could momentarily dismiss the looming expectation of his father. Today would not be about approval but rather discovery, for each conversation he undertook was a chance to explore who he was beneath the legacy. Inside the conference room with Sarah, everything felt amplified. Her enthusiasm welcomed him, yet the stakes loomed large. As they exchanged pleasantries, Ethan felt the weight of his aspirations solidify. He mentally reviewed his notes, reminding himself that this was not merely an idea, it was the start of something greater than himself. "Ethan, I can see it in your eyes," Sarah began, her tone both encouraging and illuminating. "You have a vision that can resonate deeply. What do you want us to achieve together?" Swallowing hard, he took a deep breath. "I want to start a program that provides resources to struggling families, a way for kids to build a pathway out of the cycle of hardship. We can partner with local businesses to create an ecosystem of support." As the words flowed, Ethan felt an unfamiliar liberation. He had never vocalized his deep-seated desire so clearly before. Each point he made felt like seeds sown in fertile ground, and he could see Sarah's eyes light with each new idea. "That's incredible. This has the potential to grow beyond any measure we can imagine." But she hesitated, reading his shifting expressions. "Are you ready for the implications? This isn't just a side project. This could redefine your legacy." An electric jolt coursed through him, her words stirred a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He nodded, realizing this was it, he had to confront these implications head-on. The commitment would demand a reckoning with his father. This moment didn't merely pivot on his relationship with his father, it sent shockwaves through the very concept of who he believed himself to be. As they brainstormed potential strategies, Ethan felt his passion igniting a flame within him. He discovered hidden competencies: how to connect ideas, structure outreach strategies, and navigate potential partnerships, pieces that had long lay dormant, waiting for the right catalyst. The meeting wrapped up, and an impending sense of responsibility settled upon him. Ethan realized he needed to speak to his father soon, to unveil this new vision. Insecurity flickered at the edges of his resolve, warning him of potential backlash but also fueling his commitment. He would no longer be just a bystander in his father's world. He had to tread carefully, the stakes were higher than ever. The confrontation with his father would not just challenge their relationship but also demand he confront the very essence of his identity. As Ethan stepped into the sunlight, he felt charged for the confrontation awaiting him. He was primed to unpack his vision, but lingering doubts gnawed at his resolve. At that moment, the door swung open to an untold challenge awaiting his voice. Was he prepared to face the mountain his father represented? The question clung in the air like a silent storm, filling the horizon of his imagination. Next, he would have to craft his approach for the biggest discussion of his life. Ethan stared into the rearview mirror, examining the reflection that seemed foreign to him. Determination flickered in his eyes, but self-doubt whispered from the depths of his consciousness. This would not simply be a conversation, it would be a confrontation of ideals, worlds, and above all, the legacy he felt burdened by yet was desperate to redefine. As he navigated home through the familiar streets, he rehearsed his words, each articulation of his plan feeling both empowering and terrifying. What would his father's reaction be? The man who had spent a lifetime building a business empire on the principles of profit and influence would likely see Ethan's vision as naive, a philanthropic endeavor bound to distract from the family name. Yet, his mind flickered back to the emotion he had felt in that meeting with Sarah. The spark of possibility, the shared vision that had lit a fire within him, was something he could not dismiss. He had a chance to build something that extended beyond his father's expectations, something rooted in compassion and awareness of the struggles faced by others. Arriving home, the distinct scent of leather from the study mixed with the comforting aroma of coffee, grounding him momentarily. His father sat behind a grand mahogany desk, effortlessly commanding presence in the space. The walls adorned with accolades and framed newspaper articles felt suffocating, as if they were constraining the very air around him. "Ethan." His father's voice boomed, a stark contrast to the anxious flutter in Ethan's stomach. "You're back early. Business go all right?" "Yeah, it was productive," Ethan replied, forcing a nonchalant tone, while his heart raced. As he sat across from his father, every detail of the room amplified the stakes. Even the polished surface of the desk felt like an obstacle, a barrier separating his aspirations from his father's tangible world of wealth and control. "Good. I trust you're thinking about your future." His father's gaze sharpened, and Ethan understood that the conversation was not just idle banter. He shifted in his seat, feeling the urgency of the moment like a drumbeat. He stated, swallowing away the lump of apprehension lodged in his throat. In fact, I want to discuss a project that's important to me. Despite his intention to maintain composure, doubt flickered within him. What if this was a futile venture? Was he prepared to counter his father's inevitable pushback? Yet, this was more than just an idea, it was a burgeoning commitment to a cause he could no longer ignore. What sort of project? His father leaned back, folding his arms as if bracing for impact. Drawing in a deep breath, Ethan unleashed the vision that had been consuming him. I want to start a program that connects struggling families with resources, offering support to children and widening their opportunities. It's about creating a network of uplifting possibilities. He watched as his father's expression morphed from curiosity to skepticism. Do you think that kind of initiative will yield returns? It sounds rather ambitious for someone in your position. Ethan took a mental step back, realizing that the apprehension was more palpable than he had anticipated. The reality of being perceived as an idealist weighed heavily. Trying to sever his ideals from his father's business rationale felt monumental. It's not just about returns, it's about making a difference. We can work with local businesses to create partnerships. There's potential here. Potential is one thing, Ethan. But emotion doesn't translate to profit. You need to think practically, his father shot back, an impatience creeping into his tone. Ethan's resolve hardened but still stung with uncertainty. But it doesn't have to be all about profit. Sometimes, the greatest legacies are built on changing lives, not just balance sheets. Silence slithered between them, an electric tension tangible in the air. He could feel something shifting. The idea that his path could diverge from his father's was both exhilarating and terrifying. Would this challenge solidify his stance as a son crafting his own legacy, or would it further alienate him from the man whose approval he desperately sought? As the unease settled, Ethan realized he had crossed a threshold. This was more than just a conversation, it was a defining moment. He was standing on the precipice of a new identity, teetering between his father's expectations and his own burgeoning dreams. Before the exchange could continue, a ringing phone interrupted, causing both to momentarily lose focus. It was a message from Sarah, an unexpected reminder that momentum was building in his favor. As he glanced at the screen, a surge of renewed conviction washed over him. He needed to maintain this momentum and clarify the importance of his vision not just for himself but for those who were represented in his ideas. Was he ready to push further, to challenge his father's perception of what success truly meant? The realization settled heavily. He was standing at the edge of a real transition, one that would either elevate him or force him deeper into conflict. He looked back at his father, who now wore an expression of contemplation. Ethan knew that this conversation was far from over. It would require strategy, patience, and strength he had yet to tap into. Yet, in that moment, a defiant spark burned within him. He wasn't merely reimagining his future, he was setting the stage for the encounter that would reshape everything. But was he truly prepared for the identity crisis that was about to unfold? Ethan's heart raced as he settled into an uneasy silence following the slight disruption. His throat tightened, thoughts whirling beneath the surface. Did he have the right approach to sway his father's perception? He glanced down at the phone in his hands, and Sarah's message pulsed through him like a guiding light. Remember why you're doing this. The simple reminder meant more than she realized. It provided clarity amid the chaos. Ethan? His father's voice cut through the air, pulling him back. What's this really about? Is this just a phase? It's not a phase. Ethan burst out, feeling a well of frustration rise. This matters to me. It's about showing that we can use our resources for something beyond profit. It's about integrity. His father's expression shifted, skepticism returning. Integrity doesn't have a financial value, son. It won't pay the bills or sustain this legacy you're worried about losing. Ethan resisted the urge to respond with anger, instead opting for a measured tone. Isn't that the point? To create a legacy that means something? The world has changed, Dad. People care about more than just numbers, they care about purpose. A wall had gone up between them again, old grudges and hidden fears clouding the space. The back and forth felt like a chess match, each maneuver revealing more than just the current position but also their underlying motivations. Ethan realized this wasn't just about his idea, it was about stepping into his own shoes and making a choice that could redefine both of their lives. Define purpose for me, Ethan, his father challenged, leaning closer, eyes narrowing. What does that look like for a family who has always traded in dollars? That stung, the implication that his dreams were frivolous. It looks like giving children pathways to success that don't revolve solely around wealth. It's about inspiring them to realize they have value regardless of their circumstances. His father shook his head, half mockingly. And who will support this? It's a noble vision, but impractical. You need to be more realistic. Ethan paused, conjuring moments from his childhood when his father had explained business tactics with passion. He felt alive in those memories and realized that the passion resided within him now, repurposed for a new mission. Maybe it's not just about who will support it, but about who can be inspired to join in. I'll approach it like any other venture. We can generate interest and attract partners, but we have to start somewhere. Each word he spoke gathered weight, the conviction behind them wrapping around the incredulity in his father's eyes. He was painting a picture fueled by visions that diverged from the entrenched world of profit, a space his father had occupied alone for so long. Ethan's voice steadied, a calmness now rising above the previous tumult. I know you see this as a distraction, but think about how many lives we can touch. We can innovate within our industry and lead by example. This could be our legacy, a business model that transforms lives while still being sustainable. His father inhaled sharply, as if considering the value of Ethan's fervor for the first time. The tension lessened, ever so slightly, as they both recognized the uncomfortable truth beneath their confrontation. Ethan was not just rejecting his father's worldview, he was also acknowledging the necessity for transformation that would surely redefine them both. What if it fails? His father asked quietly, almost hesitantly now. The armor around him was beginning to crack. That's a risk I'm willing to take, Ethan replied, a fire igniting in him. But if I don't try, I'll never know. This isn't about avoiding failure, it's about pursuing something worth risking everything for. The room felt charged with unspoken possibility, and as Ethan met his father's gaze, both were confronted with an implicit understanding. In seeking his identity, Ethan redefined not only his future but also challenged his father to reconsider the weight of legacy and its true meaning. His father finally exhaled, the slightest hint of acceptance unwinding his features. You really believe in this, don't you? Ethan nodded, feeling the frayed connection between duty and aspiration begin to mend, albeit tentatively. I do. And I need your support. A moment hung between them, pregnant with possibilities but laden with uncertainty. Just then, another ding from his phone shattered the tension, and Ethan glanced down at the screen. It was a notification about funding opportunities for social enterprises. The convergence of his recent conversation and potential real-world moves sent adrenaline through him. Could this be the catalyst he needed to take a step forward? Ethan looked back at his father, ready to argue the next point, but lingering doubt kept him tethered. Would he truly have the courage to step into the unknown even if success was not guaranteed? The dull thrum of the uncertain future began to pulse in his veins. In this moment, he realized that with each forward movement, he was not just risking failure, he was redefining success. He would not leave this moment without an answer. What if I bring you into this process? We can look for opportunities together. His father's brow furrowed in contemplation, and as he considered the prospect, Ethan felt a sense of urgency. This was the moment to solidify his resolve or lose it altogether. But the deeper question for Ethan loomed larger than ever. Could he truly shift the narrative of his legacy and still gain the respect of the father he admired? The echo of doubt returned, whispering through the silence the real battle was just beginning. Ethan sat in his father's sprawling study, the weight of his aspirations heavy on his shoulders. The air crackled between them, charged with unspoken truths and the simmering intensity of a burgeoning confrontation. Ethan had finally made a bold claim about his vision, yet his father's piercing skepticism lingered like a thick fog. As his father mulled over Ethan's proposal, time seemed to stretch, each second heavy with significance. He could feel the remnants of doubt gnawing at him. But unlike in the past, when he would shy away from confrontation, he was determined to stand his ground. If we can align our resources toward this initiative, we can not only uplift families but redefine what our legacy truly represents, one that embraces compassion without compromising excellence. His father scrutinized him, attempting to gauge Ethan's resolve. You really want to go through with this in the face of everything else? The family name is on the line. Exactly, Ethan replied, emboldened. It's about time we shifted the narrative. This isn't just about me anymore, it's about real lives, real change. What we build can reshape our industry and restore our family's reputation in ways beyond monetary success. Ethan noticed the subtle shift in his father's demeanor. The transformative conversations from earlier had sown seeds of contemplation within him. Perhaps the pressure of solely focusing on profit had kept them both tethered to outdated metrics of success. What are you suggesting? His father asked. There was a cautious curiosity in his tone, an opening that hadn't existed before. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. Let us define our approach together. I'll lead the initiative, but your experience could guide its structure. We can utilize strategic partnerships to ensure sustainability. It's time we act in ways that resonate with social responsibility, not just as a charity but as a profitable venture that gives back to the community. He watched as his father's expression softened slightly. The concept of teamwork, especially against the backdrop of familial legacy, was a slippery slope. What if this path blurred the lines of perception that had held tightly to their family's name for so long? What if you fail? His father pressed, but there wasn't a bite behind the words, just a lingering caution. Ethan felt the uncertainty in that question, but he welcomed it. What if we succeed? What if we discover that our ethics drive innovation more than lineage ever did? Silence enveloped them once more, pregnant with potential. The conversations that had seemed impossible mere weeks ago now felt within reach. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime of pondering, his father took a deep breath, leaning forward in his chair. Let us explore this idea. Ethan's heart soared at the admission. In that moment, the chasm between expectation and aspiration seemed to narrow. Thank you. I can begin drafting a proposal to share with local businesses and organizations that might resonate with our goals. His father nodded, signaling a shift, and with it came a rush of fulfillment. It wasn't just about proposing a new vision. It was about acknowledging Ethan's growth as an individual capable of carving out a new distinction in a world dominated by his father's shadow. Over the next several weeks, they worked tirelessly to refine their approach, blending practical strategies with the humanity Ethan had sought to embed into their framework. As partnerships began to take shape, he witnessed a growing recognition for their initiative, a potent combination of corporate responsibility intertwined with personal integrity. Ethan felt validated not just by his father's involvement, but by his own progress, which unfolded in a way he hadn't anticipated. Finally, the moment came when they were set to present to an esteemed audience of community leaders and business executives. Standing in front of the gathering, Ethan delivered a speech that encapsulated not only the vision he shared with his father but also the resolve that had anchored his transformation. He spoke passionately about the unique opportunity they had to build something greater than themselves, to revive hope through practical solutions and inspire a culture of support within their community. As his words resonated, he could sense a shift in the room. They weren't just hearing a business pitch, they were witnessing a burgeoning legacy of compassion and commitment. After the presentation, the applause filled the air, but it was the expressions of approval and interest that truly validated Ethan. People wanted to invest, to participate in something that wasn't just driven by profit, but by a promise to uplift others along the way. As they stepped off the stage, Ethan felt a swell of pride. He hadn't only shared an idea, he had fulfilled a vision of his transformation. He had stepped out from his father's shadow, commanding respect not as the billionaire's son, but as a leader ready to redefine what it meant to truly succeed. In the end, Ethan realized that growth wasn't solely about overcoming the weight of expectations. It was about integrating empathy and authenticity into his pursuits. He had faced the challenge, embraced vulnerability, and emerged not only victorious in his mission but also in solidifying his identity as an individual, ready to innovate for the future. As he shared a renewed moment of connection with his father, gratitude bubbled within him. "Thank you for believing in this," Ethan said, feeling a rift close between them. His father nodded, and Ethan understood that their partnership had evolved into something profound. It was more than a business venture, it was the foundation of a new legacy, one built on shared ambition and altruism. Ethan knew he was just beginning, but he had taken a giant leap toward becoming the person he had always aspired to be. This was the triumph he had sought, an enduring achievement beyond mere titles or accolades. He had forged a path that intertwined purpose with passion, and for the first time, he felt true fulfillment. The victory was his, a solid confidence radiating from within, as he stood ready to take the next steps toward a future rich with potential. Now, more than ever, he believed in the value of the legacy he was creating, a legacy that would inspire change, influence lives, and, ultimately, prove that true success was measured not by dollars, but by the impact one could have on the world. And there was no turning back. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, we love hearing from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand how important your support is to the channel.